Hello, guys. How's it going? Um, Today, I just wanted to talk about a little bit about a meditation technique that I use. It really helps me, really kicked my game of meditation to the next level. And so, I'm assuming if you're watching this, you have some sort of interest in meditation or you already do meditation. And if you don't, that's fine too. Um, you can still use this technique right out from the start. It's really easy. It's really helpful. It kind of takes a little bit of patience and getting used to, and there's usually a lot of resistance to it at the beginning because, sometimes when people decide they want to meditate, they do it because they want to do nothing, and that's fine. Doing nothing is a valid form of meditation, and in fact, you can even still do this technique while doing nothing. In fact, that's where you want to get to with this technique if you really practice it and you really learn it to where and you get to where you're supposed to be with it. You can really just do nothing and have this technique work. So the technique is called See, Hear, Feel, and from the title you can tell it involves seeing, hearing, and feeling. So in our day-to-day lives, when we are just walking around and doing our stuff, errands, sitting at home doing stuff on the computer, you have basically these three categories of sensory perception that you can observe in yourself. So you have seeing, where you see stuff in the outside world. You look at the computer screen, you look at the picture frame on the wall, and you see it. Or when you close your eyes, say when you're falling asleep, or when you just you want to relax for a second, you close your eyes, you get a little bit of flickering or whatever kind of imagery it is that you get in your vision space, in your seeing space, in your mind basically. That's also an example of seeing. And then there's hearing, which is you hear raindrops outside, you hear birds, you hear the audio from the movie you're watching. That's an example of hearing out. And then there's hearing in, which we did this for the seeing. We did seeing out and seeing in. Then there's the hearing in is basically your thoughts. So when you meditate, you'll notice that you basically kind of start talking to yourself in your head, and you're saying all these things. Oh, I went to work. My boss was mad at me. He was being passive aggressive. He was this. He was that. And you have all these thoughts racing around in your head. But if you really take a second and just kind of just realize what that is, you can realize that it's just you talking, like you would be talking if you were talking to someone in front of you, or you would be talking to someone on Zoom, or how I'm talking right now. I'm processing these things in my mind first, and then I'm using my mouth and my vocal cords to express those thoughts. So before the actual outward talking, the vocal cords and the mouth being involved, you have this processing going on in your mind. So that's an example of hearing in. And then hearing out, as I mentioned, is just hearing someone talk to you, hearing the raindrops, or hearing any kind of noise. Then there's feel. So we did see, hear, and then there's feel. Feel is any kind of sensory perception in your body. So if someone touches you, that's an example of feel. You can really observe that, and you can observe exactly how it feels down to the as minutely as you possibly can. That's an example of feel. And then the other example of feel, that's a feel out example. Another thing, part of feeling is feeling in. So feeling in usually involves emotions, and that's the inward kind of portion of the feel technique. So uh, when you when you're meditating, for example, and you feel a little bit of anxiety come up, that's feeling. You feel that. You feel, and usually feeling happens around the midsection here. It could happen anywhere. Obviously, if you feel like an itch on your head, that's up here on your head. But what I mean by it happens in your midsection is that usually when you have some sort of sensory, like emotional kind of feeling, it happens right here in your belly. Even if it's happiness, you feel a little bit of warmth, and if it's fear, if it's whatever it might be, you feel a little bit of you basically sense it in this area. And so what happens is you can think of the see hear feel technique as like a triangle. So there's the back. This is here. It happens usually in between your ears, where you hear things. You hear things in your mind, or you hear things from the outside world. See, if your eyes are closed, they usually happen around this part of the mind. You can sense, some images and flickering lights, or even a blank screen. That's still another example of seeing. Even a blank screen, that's an example of seeing gone, which is when you see, but it's what you're seeing is the absence of anything that could possibly be seen. And so it's important to note those as well. So when I say note, I mean when you're meditating, you have these perceptions, you make a mental note of them. So let's say you're sitting there and you have some imagery come up in your vision space. Say your dog running, you see your dog running. That's an example of see. So you note that. You just say in your own mind, see. If you hear some stuff in your head, you hear yourself saying, "Oh, meditation is stupid. Why am I doing this?" That's an example of hear, and you note that, and you say hear in your own mind, and you don't note the actual note itself. So you don't say, "I heard myself say hear." You only note what's happening with that verbal note, and you can say it out loud. That's called spoken labels, or you can just say it in your mind, basically, which is just noting in your mind. And what you want to do is you want to sit there. You can sit, you can walk, you can meditate in a variety of different ways. But whatever it is you're doing, you want to create a nice pattern, a nice like rhythmic beat kind of thing, where every few seconds you note a new stimulus, whether it be see, hear, or feel, and then you focus intently on that for a few seconds until another thing comes up. And you don't want to be looking for things. If you can, if that's what happens for you, that's fine. You just have to keep practicing until you're able to allow the sensory perceptions to occur, and then you look at them intently. So what you're trying to do with this technique, the main goal, and this is Shinzen Young's prescription, this is what he has created as a meditation technique. The main goal of this technique is to cultivate three skills of mindfulness, and this is what defines mindfulness: sensory clarity. Sorry, I forgot them. Sensory clarity, concentration, and equanimity. Okay, so sensory clarity is basically being able to discern between the different sensory stimuli. So if you have some mental talk going on, you can discern that from the imagery, you can discern that from the feeling. So if you have, say, a mental image come up of your dog running, and at the same exact time you feel good about your dog running because you love your dog, sensory clarity is the ability to discern between the image of your dog running and the feeling of feeling good. So that's sensory clarity. Concentration is, I don't know if I'm getting this perfectly correct, but I will leave a link to the PDF from which I have gathered this information from below, and I'll leave a link to Shinzen Young's website as well. But so concentration is the ability to once you note something, so you note, say, the feeling of happiness, you can focus on it intently and go down to the minutest detail as you possibly can of that feeling, and just feel, does it feel warm, does it feel, whatever it feels, you don't ask yourself these questions in the moment, but once you cultivate the skill of sensory or of concentration to a high enough degree, you are able to basically see that feeling as clearly as possible and untangle it from whatever it is that it's tangled up with, and just see it for what it is exactly, without judging it, without anything. And then that leads me actually directly and very well into equanimity, which is the ability to not judge what you're feeling. So if you feel anxiety, to just feel the anxiety without saying, "Oh, I'm anxious. Oh, I feel like I am, I feel anxious right now, and that's bad." The ability to cultivate equanimity is the ability to feel whatever it is you're feeling without having a positive or negative reaction to it, and without getting pulled into it. Being able to stay and observe what it is without being pulled into it. And that might sound cold, that might sound difficult, like it might sound like boring, like you're not being stimulated to the degree you want to be by the different things that you're feeling. Which, if you feel that way, that's fine, and but at some point you will realize that your reactions to whatever it is you're feeling, whether they be positive or negative reactions, are really eating you up, and they're really causing you to, have a difficult go at life. Because when you feel something good, for example, when that thing disappears, when that thing ends, which everything comes to an end, right? You start to long for that thing, and you start to crave it, and you start to feel depressed about the fact that it's not there. And then when something bad happens, you get caught up in how bad it is, and even when it's gone, you still feel bad about it. You still feel, oh, this happened, that's so terrible. But once you cultivate these skills, and what the reason I'm saying you need to cultivate the skills is because these are really skills. They're not something that you can just decide that I am equanimous with everything, I am clear about everything, and I can concentrate perfectly. You can't decide. These skills are really skills, just like any sport or any uh, programming, for example, computer programming, or any other type of skill. They really require you to practice. So if you can do 10 minutes a day, or even more than that, that formal practice of doing the see, hear, feel technique will really help you um, get a lot more out of life. Basically, you'll be a lot more satisfied with your life, even if you don't even change anything, right? You might be depressed now, but once you cultivate these skills, you will have more fulfillment and satisfaction out of life. It's like how Mick Jagger says, "I can't get no satisfaction." That um, what I interpret from that song is that same feeling that I had, that I still have sometimes, that where you're doing all these awesome things, but you're always not satisfied. You're always trying to get more out of life. So yeah, so hopefully that can help some people. I don't even know if I even explained it clearly or not, but yeah, thank you. Have a good one.